Hello and welcome to CapTech Trends. Today we're doing something a little bit different and we're doing a video recording in studio. So if you want to take a look at this, you can check us out on our website, captechconsulting.com. Today we're taking a look at the Metaverse. There's a lot of hype recently. We want to look past that hype and look more into the reality of the Metaverse and what companies can be doing today. And I have with me Clinton Teegarden, a director at CapTech focused on innovative technologies. Clinton, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be more of a back and forth as opposed to a direct interview like we do in previous ones. And I guess I wanted to start with a little bit of my history in VR so people can know where that is, and then kind of get into where we are today and get into the hype and reality and such.
Absolutely.
I started in 1992, and Noah behind the cameras, when we were preparing for this, let me know that he wasn't born yet. So great. But I was looking at it in 1992. I did a paper on it in school. And in research for that paper, I was at Roanoke College, and I actually drove to see my friend Kevin at UVA, and he got me into the VR lab. And they were hanging like tennis balls from the ceiling and putting the goggles on and trying to map the optics so that where the ball is in physical space is where it is in virtual space. And it was very cool, very exciting. That was the same year Snow Crash came out, and that's where the Metaverse term came from.
Right.
So I wrote like my favorite paper I ever wrote for college, and I got a C. And I went and talked to the professor, and she was like, "This is science fiction." I asked for something that was real, and so I kind of want to get into a car now and find out where she is. But long story to say, I've been involved with this for a long time. As soon as the HTC Vive came out, I was on board, bought it, Vive Pro, Quest. So I've really been active in using the technology as well as doing some sample development in the technology. And for CapTech, about 3 or 4 years ago, we made the prediction to focus on augmented reality, not virtual reality. And we did that not because we think it's a more immersive experience, it isn't, but because everyone has a phone.
Right.
Right. So you have it and you like it and you're comfortable using it. So one of the early things we found out was that the physical barrier to the hardware was a limiting factor. Any thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree, and I think we're still there, right? I mean, and all of these devices that you've mentioned, you still have to take it off eventually because you're too hot or it doesn't fit quite right, so it hurts, or if you don't actually wear it quite right, you get a little dizzy on the inside. So yes. I think we're still there.
Yeah, the barrier that gets me is the Quest 2, and that's the one that Facebook has bought, right?
Right. I own that one.
Yes, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. And what I mean by that is it's an all-in-one. You can set it on your head. Far better than the Vive. We have to go into a PC, log into Steam, do all these additional steps, set up the lighthouses to get outside in tracking, all that stuff. But because it fits on your head, the GPU is not that powerful. Right. So anything fast motion drops frames. You can get more motion sickness. But for slow-moving things, it's getting pretty close.
Yep.
And the resolution's good.
Yeah, totally agree. In fact, actually, the first time I rode a roller coaster on it, I was like, am I dizzy because the roller coaster, or am I dizzy because of just some of the lag or some of the weird?
It's choppy.
Yeah, right.
On the Vive Pro, it is very smooth, and it's at proprioception, right? Where you are in physical space. To the degree that doesn't match that in virtual space,
right,
you get sick or you fall down, or right. It's very, for those who haven't tried it, it can be very scary when that starts to happen. I was doing something the other day, and I was in a bedroom virtually, and I was looking for clues to something I was solving. And so I was looking under the bed, and I went to get up, and I tried to put my full weight on the bed, which wasn't
right
there.
Through.
Right through, fell, and that can happen. So it is that immersive.
Right.
I guess I want to be excited about the Metaverse. I've been waiting for this for a very long time. But I'm sort of having this strange reaction to the Metaverse term because there's been no breakthrough in technology before or after that term.
Right. In fact, a lot of the current metaverses have been around since 2016, 17. The actual places, Decentraland being the biggest, it's been around for at least 5-6 years. So what's changed that now we're actually talking about it here in the last few
It's
months?
got a name,
right? Yeah,
that's what's changed. But that should be a good thing, right? Get more people aware of it and interested in it. 2003, I think, is when Second Life came out. So we've been through this before, this digital twin attempt.
I think Noah was alive then.
Noah, you're alive then? Yes. Noah's shaking his head, yes. Yeah, and I remember companies we worked with, retail companies, putting assets, in that area, buying land, and it fizzled out pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I like to think about what's changed between now and then.
Blockchain,
right,
is really the only difference if you look at the current lands that are out there.
With NTFs.
Right, right.
NFTs.
Or NFTs, yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's really the major difference. I mean, you own a piece of land and you have a permanent token saying, right, yep, you had this, and you're in that history forever.
Well, and the blockchain also leads to a decentralized model versus a centralized model. Right.
Which has a lot of great positives, but as we were mentioning earlier, there's some impacts, to our actual physical world as a result of that.
Right.
Global warming and things like that, just the amount of CPU that it takes to run something like that.
That's something people don't consider, mm-hmm, that how heavy, I read something recently that Bitcoin mining, to be specific, uses more energy a year than the entire country of Sweden. Right? Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And NFTs are falling into another bucket of high energy usage, mm-hmm, as well. And so there is a cost. There's a real world carbon footprint cost, yeah, to building out a metaverse. And by the way, when I say a metaverse, we mean more than one, right?
Yeah. There's at least 4 major ones right now.
Right. One of the things I get, it's interesting to me from our client's perspective, yeah, is what does it mean to be present in the metaverse? Right. Because it's plural. Mm-hmm. So does that mean you're going to choose a metaverse in which to be in, or are you going to have some sort of abstraction that allows you to be present in multiple metaverses? Where do you choose to buy land?
Right.
Where do you choose to have a virtual presence?
Right. I mean, right now everything it's one metaverse. They're all built. The current ones are built off of the Ethereum platform, but they're still physically different places. So it's just I guess to be present, you'd have to choose. Just pick the one that you think is going to be the most successful, or maybe you're going for the one that's going to give you the most bang for your buck from land prices.
What should happen is there should be an abstraction broker, mm-hmm, whereby I have stores, I have products, I have services, I have NFTs of goods that people want. And all the metaverses subscribe to my content, right? With coordinates to know where to place them and do them and that kind of stuff, as opposed to me having to go out and physically buy, quote, land and property, yeah, and real estate in these multiple metaverses.
Yeah, agreed. I think the one perk, since they all, at least the current ones, are all built off Ethereum, you might end up with this world where we have contractors, so to speak, in the digital space where they can go and build in these various locations for you to build your buildings or your storefronts or whatever it may be.
Right. Let's talk about the storefront a bit, because I've gone back and forth with a couple of people on this. The reason why Amazon is great for buying stuff, right, is I can go out there, find something really quickly using filters and searches and search history and personalization and all those things. In a couple clicks, get what I want, and it shows up sometimes the same day.
Right.
Sometimes the next day. The idea that I'm going to walk down the street by walking in place virtually in my house and go into a store and walk up and down aisles, that's a very skeuomorphic approach, right? And I do think that brands will want to have a presence. So they may want to have a store. They, mm-hmm, may want to have some kind of presence thing. But one thing we've learned from other technologies is when we went from print to web, it was a direct copy and it was kind of bad.
Yeah.
And then people realized, what can we do in web that you can't do in print?
Yep.
Made it better.
Absolutely.
Then you went from web to mobile, and they tried to put an entire web page on a small phone, and it was fine but kind of horrible. And then it was, how do we personalize and customize the experience and make it reactive to or responsive to this platform, mm-hmm, right? Same thing with wearables. We keep making that same mistake over and over again. So I think we're going to make that mistake again with the metaverse and have a very linear translation. Yep. What companies should be thinking about is when I come into something, how can they reimagine, mm-hmm, what that experience can be without the constraints of a physical store? You know me, you know my size, yep, you know my preferences, you know what I've bought before at other places. my store experience should be different than yours.
Yep, and that should be totally possible. I mean, they'll be able to build a decentralized application so that it essentially runs when they go into your store, your physical, whatever your land presence is. I mean, it's possible. But right now, they are making that same mistake. We're just building outlet malls with billboards and the same physical world, but we're just putting it digitally in these new spaces.
And how often do I see something in reality and decide I want it without having been in a store?
Yeah.
Right. So I see Dave Grohl, play his Gibson 335 on stage. I like that guitar.
Yep.
Or I was at a meeting the other night and someone had a new pair of shoes on and I wondered what kind of shoes they were. I'd never seen that before. So in a metaverse environment, I shouldn't then have to go to the shoe store and try to find them. I should be able to have some sort of gesture that takes whatever they're wearing or whatever they're holding and pulls it up. I can inspect it. I can purchase it right there. Right. And so that changes the customer experience a great deal.
Yeah.
Right.
And imagine that's where Facebook probably wants to take it. I mean, they make their money off that analytics. So maybe their goal is to create that, not only the Quest devices, but to create that connection point between what you want and based on what you see.
Well, and the advertising is going to be really in your face. Right.
Yeah.
Because right now you buy something and then you get ads for that thing you bought for the next month. That's going to be even more irritating in the metaverse. Going back to Facebook, though, and the multiple metaverses, one of the things I'm concerned about is right now in Facebook and other social media, I'm not singling anybody out, there's a tendency to everyone go off to their own tribe, right? Echo chamber. Yeah. When someone says, I've done my own research, and this is not political, this is both sides of the aisle, right? When they say I did my own research, what that typically means is I drank a half a bottle of wine while I searched the internet to find a blog post that agreed with me, right? That's not research, that's confirmation bias.
That's right.
And so what we're going to find with multiple metaverses, I'm afraid, is people being fed this, the red meat that they want to eat, right? And they're going to go further and further away from each other as opposed to challenging their ideas. They're going to go to where it's comfortable and easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if we land on one metaverse, if we're talking about advertisements or things that are geared towards us, we're still going to see that, right? I mean, now all the billboards and political advertisements, or maybe even non-political, just any general information that you want to, that you're looking for information about, it's going to be right there for you, and you might not be getting both sides of the story.
Yeah, so I hadn't thought about it in exactly that term, but personalization is a way to introduce confirmation bias.
That's right.
Really easily.
The more you see it, the more you believe it.
Right.
That's right.
For sure. That's a little bit scary. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with you is the barrier between where we are now and when the metaverse will be common. I want to read something to you if I have it handy. But anyway, it was from the Decentraland website that you had. And essentially, there was a very pretty website. It looks like it's approachable.
Yeah.
And you click on what is land. And it goes into land is a non-fungible token comprised of an XY Cartesian product. And it goes all this math, like within the first sentence. And I know what they mean. I know the words. You do too. It's like anyone in our industry is going to know what they're talking about. But anyone outside our industry is going to not understand.
Yeah.
And this is the most popular platform, right? So it's got to be easier. It's got to be less technical. The wearables have to be less bulky. Right. So I think there's still a physical aspect to this as well as a user experience aspect to it.
I agree. I mean, they're all built off of some sort of blockchain, right? And if you ask, I would say probably the majority of people on the street, they've heard the word, they've heard it tossed around, they know it's something about crypto. But what that actually means or how it works or how it means that you have something, that's physically yours, they don't understand that. So to the average person or anybody else that I've talked to about this, really, there's like, well, how's the metaverse different than the Sims game that I played when I was in 5th grade? And it's like, well, it's a bit different, but there's a lot of the same, So it's a tough answer to come up with when there is so much in common with them other than really blockchain.
Yeah, for sure. An interesting thing I noticed when I was getting into VR early on, I would have people over and everybody wanted to try it. It really is cool. It's great.
Yeah.
But the second you start doing that, you kill the party.
That's right.
Because one person's having fun doing something immersive for them, and everybody else is sitting around waiting for their turn. And they're not. You stop talking to each other. It's not a good party game.
No, unless they do something funny, like try to put their hand on a bed and fall.
Then it is funny. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. But I have done a lot of social things, and I have attended concerts.
Right.
Right. And so you are social with other people in the metaverse,
right,
but you are completely cut out of your current reality. That's another reason why I thought AR was going to take off first, is because it's a more shareable experience.
Right. We have platforms for that. Yeah.
Right, for sure. So I think those are things that are going to have to change. One of the things and we're thinking about what companies need to do, buying land, buying real estate, buying clothing, right? That's going to be real dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's going to be some interesting hurdle. There's some digital twinning that can happen, where if I do buy a pair of virtual Nikes, I also get that physical pair at home.
Right.
So maybe I'm buying a pair of shoes and I get the NFT for that pair of shoes at the same time.
Nike's doing that already.
Right.
I mean, it's out there and happening. So the buying land and buying these, I mean, I guess when you say real dollars, you can exchange that for, in Decentraland, it's mana as their currency, or you can use your crypto wallet, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever it might be that you have. So I guess the definition of real dollars may become a little loose eventually, but you could, essentially cash out, right?
It's an asset.
Yeah,
for sure. And then I start thinking about land. And if I was going to go into, I haven't gone into Decentraland yet. I probably will to check it out. When you buy land there and you buy a house there, what does that cost? I don't know yet. I
actually did a lot of research on this because I thought, eventually, when the land was first, created, who got the money? How was that? It was, it's essentially, if you think about back to 300-400 years ago, the land was just taken, and there was a cost to that, but it was more humanitarian cost. And this, it's like, well, digitally there. So what was the cost? And they actually just went to an auction, and they went pretty cheap. And then in Decentraland, you saw the prices really they've been very volatile, especially since Facebook announced that they were changing their name to Meta. That they actually spiked way up and they've been down, but they're a little bit all over the place. So it's almost like you're just kind of biding your time, hoping that you get the right price.
Right, and I hope that doesn't ruin it.
Right.
I mean, speculators have ruined other things, right? So that could make it challenging. I start to think, as it gets more and more and more expensive, are we going to have banks and financial institutions actually giving you loans to buy virtual real estate? Yeah.
I was reading a white paper from Chase, and they are creating an actual bank in Decentraland where you can actually go through this process and take out loans. In fact, in Decentraland, you can buy land and then lease it out to a company if you happen to want to do that. So there's a completely new industry that has just been created, really, or not really just created, but became a little bit more popular the last few months.
Right. So a bank is going to give me a loan to buy virtual assets. Can I use virtual assets as collateral, or do I have to use physical assets as collateral?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations as that happens and comes up. Or can I use my house as collateral to buy this digital land at?
To the extent that it's very volatile and it's driven by speculation.
Yeah,
I don't know how that collateral could be relied upon.
And I wonder how much of that depends upon crypto currencies, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other major ones becoming a little bit more stable before that starts to be more acceptable, so that there's a better exchange rate that's a little bit more known between the dollars and one crypto coin or whatever.
Right, for sure. So looking at the clients we have now, and maybe even a little bit more broad than that, I start thinking about what needs to happen now. I don't think that it's going to happen faster than I think I may have thought a year ago, right? But there is going to be an adoption curve. There's a technology hurdle. There's a hardware hurdle.
Yep.
But once that starts to roll, right, I think there's going to be some things happening quickly.
Right.
So what can companies do today?
Right.
I don't think you have to be in the metaverse today to be successful, but most companies couldn't be, right? They're not ready to be. So how do they get ready?
I believe they just need to get their digital assets correct, right? I mean, and that can have immediate impacts. What AR is as out there. You want to view your shoes and on your feet or anything like that. You need to have those digital assets created. Those same digital assets,
in a room, right?
Right, exactly. And those same digital assets can be used in any of these metaverses and essentially converted so that when you go and buy those shoes or whatever they're showing up in the correct form and to your brand specs. And that's really, really important. And it's really, by doing that, you're not putting all your eggs in this basket of, okay, I hope Decentraland or any of these other metaverses work out. You're saying, okay, what can we do now that's beneficial to us now, but also setting us up for the future in case that starts to take off more than what it is currently.
And that reminds me that the metaverse can extend conceptually beyond virtual reality.
Right.
Right. It goes into augmented reality.
Right. Absolutely.
It can go into standard gaming. Mm-hmm. It can go into a standard web interface.
Yep. Right? There's a lot of, you could go to Decentraland on a web interface now.
Right. And on your phone. Mm-hmm. Right. So if I have these digital assets, 3D digital assets, they can appear in video games.
That's
I can sell them video games. I could sell them.
Yep.
So it's a bigger thing. When I start to think about that, though, is how much has that getting that digital representation of that object? Think about all the color variations, size variations. What does that add to the unit cost of that item? Right.
That's a great question.
Right. Yeah. So now, what are you talking about? Like, if it's gonna, so do you digitize a subset that you think have high importance? Do you have a base model that you apply variations to?
Right.
And this is what companies have to start thinking about.
Yeah, it's got that architecture behind your digital assets, which really hasn't been a problem. Before now, it's kind of like, okay, what's our folder structure going to be for our assets? But now it's like, okay, how can we actually architect this one asset so that we can apply these variations, sizes, et cetera, to meet all of our needs without having to restart over and over again.
Right, and there's a difference between an asset and the asset.
That's right.
Right, and so I know that sounds funny, but imagine, I was talking about a national car retailer recently, and how do you get a picture of a 2020 Toyota Corolla, right? Is a picture of that car in that color and that model good enough, or just for that model range? Could be a 4-year run of that model.
Right.
Is one scan good enough? Or do I need the actual scan of the actual car?
That's right.
So I can check for any blemishes or dents or whatever else. One is way more expensive than the other.
Yep.
From a workflow perspective, scanning a car versus scanning the car.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
And the same thing's going to happen with all other retail items and products.
Yeah. Yeah, in that specific scenario, you're talking about like maybe a used car versus those brand new models, or just variations of those models. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or think about a guitar.
Yep.
Right. Every guitar is different.
Yep.
Right. So am I looking at a Martin D28 or the actual one that I'm buying?
That's right.
Right. And so and then the NFTs around that. Right. So this gets into that. Another interesting thing too, and maybe this has been already solved, and if so, please comment on this. But when I think of NFTs, I get the value of the originality of it, right?
Yeah.
If you got Michael Jordan's Nikes, right, and it's
right.
tagged that way. But and this happened to my son, as like 3 or 4 years ago. A friend of his was in the game and spent $100 on a hat, and I asked, "Does the hat?" It was like it was a League of Legends type of game. If it wasn't that. And I was like, does it give you any abilities? Does it give you any more strength, any more resiliency, any more dexterity? No, it's just cosmetic.
That's right.
So it's false scarcity.
Yep.
Right? And so, especially when you have multi-metaverses, the idea of false scarcity, again, goes into volatility and all these other things.
That's right.
And so my question on the NFTs is, if I have a hat that costs $100, it's essentially a series of ones and zeros. How many of those have to change before it's a different hat? So if I change the color by 10% or 5% or 1%, and the human eye can't tell the difference, but all the ones and zeros are different, is that a different hat? Who's right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like with music today. If I have the same song progression, the same chord progression, and the same melody, at what point does Happy Birthday not become Happy Birthday?
Yeah.
And so I don't know who's deciding that.
Well, I mean, and I think I think the customers decide that, right? I mean, ultimately, it's like, what are you willing to buy? If you want, if I'm Nike and I'm selling you a pair of shoes and this, and I've got Air Force Ones that are white and they look the same, but they're this, let's V1 for simplicity, and then I sell you V2, they look identical. Well, if I don't buy those because those look identical, then their value is not there. But as we see in the real world, people go out and buy those. They stand in lines to do just that. And so the question then is, does that translate to this digital world that we're going to be in? Will I have to have every version of this so that I can have the entire collection still drive us in that space? And I think the answer is going to be yes, but I guess we'll see.
Right. So the first thing we talked about for getting ready, because we kind of drifted there a bit, was 3D assets and an asset versus the asset, and also the NFT around the asset, if that's applicable. The second thing, and I think we mentioned this earlier, is companies have to understand how to work with cryptocurrency.
That's right.
Because if they're selling things in the metaverse, they have to have a way to use cryptocurrency to do that.
And they need to understand the risks of the volatility around the cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, anybody that's kind of paid attention over the last year or two, I've seen Bitcoin and Ethereum and Dogecoin go up and down. Like it's wild how much money is wiped away overnight. And
so what's their strategy with that? And then, so the third one then goes to financial institutions. Will they mortgage a virtual home? Will they mortgage property? Assets, we talked about that. I mean, financial institutions have a lot of strategy to think about. And the last one I think of is really the customer experience, which we started with that. Right? Which is, if I was a company now and I had physical assets, I would be thinking about digitizing them in an affordable way. I'd be thinking about crypto, and I would be thinking about how, in a non-schemorphic way, how are we going to engage with our customers differently on this platform and leverage the unique capabilities of that platform. All those things can happen today.
That's right.
And I think they should. I think this is coming. There's a little bit of skepticism. We saw what happened to Second Life. It came out, it was a big boom. Companies invested a lot of money in it. It fell away pretty quickly. It held on. I think it finally went out of business a couple years ago, but a private company still owns it.
Yeah, it does.
So you could still go there, but it's a whisper
still hanging
of what
on.
it was. Yeah. Well, maybe they'll get into this game, but they're centralized versus.
Maybe Meta's going to buy it.
Yeah, could be. But anyway, so I know there's some skepticism around it, but even if there is skepticism around it, and even if it has an arc similar to Second Life, which I don't think it will, having 3D assets, right, and a workflow around that makes sense.
That's right.
Understanding crypto.
That's right.
Understanding how those two affect a customer experience. That's independent than any particular implementation.
That's right. That's right. I agree 100%. I mean, AR is not going anywhere, and there's a lot of benefits. And I think still one of the biggest barriers that our clients see is just having the assets, or not even know where to start in getting that created. They don't have the talent or the resources or anything to create that, or just the understanding in general. But then if you look even further, if you want to back away from AR and even from VR, how do holograms fit in, right? If you get into that type of space, which is coming.
I've seen some pretty convincing demos,
You still need assets.
Right?
And
you still need a customer experience.
That's right. That's right.
Crypto maybe not so much in that example, but because you're not in an altered, reality state. But no, for sure, the hologram is coming. So this preparation is think of it more generically as digital twinning.
That's right.
Than a particular metaverse implementation. That's a one type of implementation.
That's right.
Right. Last thought is, what are we going to be seeing, I guess, over the next year or two? I think you're going to see people making some big splashes in music and entertainment. Right? We saw after the Super Bowl, Foo Fighters, it didn't go well. You can look that up. Fans weren't happy with it because they opened the doors all at once and it kind of crashed systems and such. But the idea of a virtual concert, the idea of participating in a virtual event, imagine watching your favorite golfer tee off and you're 6 feet away, right?
That's right.
Not an avatar. You could have an avatar, but you could also have an actual 360 view.
That's right. You can look around.
You're there, right? And so, being at a basketball game, all these things are things we can do now. I've gone to concerts.
Yep.
Right. I went to a recorded concert and was on the center of the stage. Still great stuff.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see music and entertainment rush to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a place where retail and banks, whatever, can get involved on the peripheral, because they can be supportive of that. Again, if they have the assets and they understand crypto. Mm-hmm. So that's really sort of VR without the metaverse social part of it.
Right. And I would hope that we see the VR take a leap so that I can look down the aisle and see my family sitting next to me at the concert or at the baseball game. So we're cheering on, and I can see
even if your kids are at a college somewhere or they're at home somewhere.
Right. I mean, and what a great way to
your kids will virtually be sitting in a different section. Trust me.
Yeah, probably.
Well, it'll be just as uncool to sit next to your parents in the game. Yeah. So any closing thoughts you would have?
No, I think we've covered it all. I think ultimately it's really, what can you do now that is an investment, that is not just putting everything in this metaverse basket and taking a step back, taking a break and saying, okay, what, let's get these ducks in a row, these digital assets, this type of architecture ready for whatever may happen, and knowing that we can still put them to use in all these other personalization and all these and AR and anything else that might come down, because they're going to be needed regardless of what happens in the metaverse.
Right. Metaverse, again, I'll wrap up with a similar concept. Metaverse was defined or termed in '92.
That's right.
And if you've never read Snow Crash, it's a good book, but it's scary how accurate they got. I mean, they basically described Google Earth perfectly in 1992. But anyway, so it's been around a long time. As you said, there's 4 or 5 metaverses already. It's interesting that Facebook can change their name, and now all of a sudden, companies and analysts are saying that now it's a trend because it has a name. Yeah. But there's been no change except for recognition and exposure, which may be the most important change, right?
That's right.
So it's going to be interesting to see over the next year what the adoption rates are and how hardware companies respond, how traditional brick and mortar and e-commerce responds.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Facebook or Meta take some sizable investments where they're going to have to really kind of will it into existence themselves, right? And they're going to take a lot of hits for a while, but they're a large company. I think they will balance it. I think it will go somewhere. It's just a matter of getting everything right and how long it takes to get there.
Well, I've been waiting for this for a long time, so I really hope it works.
For Noah's whole life.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it'll happen. I hope it happens. And again, final thought: the stuff you have to do to prepare for it will prepare you for many, many other things that will happen. So don't prepare for the one, prepare for the many, and everything's going to work out.
That's right.
Great. Thank you, Clinton.
Thank you.